Yeah. I think one of those big ones was there was a ton of talk about, is Cody Rhodes actually going to leave AEW? Is he actually going to go back to WWE? That was such a huge storyline. Where did you sit on that as the news was starting to break?
I mean, I knew it right away because it's all obvious. I mean, I didn't know the day he made the call. But I knew just a few days later, when they had the meeting and the lawyers were involved, and I kind of heard, he's leaving, and it made sense, even though of course he's going to deny he's going to WWE.
Mhm.
And there were always like, oh, it may fall through or whatever. It was kind of like, once the break was made, he's going to WWE. And I mean, he told his friends he wasn't, or at least some friends. But even then, I know it's like, look, it's Cody and he's protecting the business, in his mind, because he wants to do the surprise and everything like that. And that's just the nature of the beast. But I mean, there was never, I mean, I always presumed he was going to WWE. And I knew when the WrestleMania lineup was made, when Seth Rollins had no opponent,
Yeah.
that was Cody Rhodes. I mean, I said it may not happen, and then maybe things this day, were a little weaker than that day and stuff like that. But in the end, I mean, that was, that was how it was. Unless something big happened, that was how it was going to end up. And I don't know that ever wavered, other than people trying to deny it to throw you off sense.
There was always talk, like when someone would get released from WWE, it would always immediately be like, are they going to sign with AEW? Are they going to AEW? And I said, one day someone's going to leave AEW and go to WWE. And like, I know that's not being talked about at that time, 2020, but it's going to happen one day.
Of course it was.
But it was shocking when that first person was Cody Rhodes.
Yeah. I think in some ways it was. I was a little surprised, but I mean, the one thing was when the renewal wasn't done, because Tony had an option on Cody to renew the contract like he did with the Young Bucks and others. And when January 1st happened and there wasn't a renewal, I mean, and he was out of contract. I mean, to me, that was very interesting.
Yeah.
Even then, I didn't think he was going to WWE. And, I mean, I had contact with him and he was always like, well, we are negotiating. And then, all of a sudden it was kind of like, weeks are going by. I mean, but it was the assumption we're going to work it out. And then all of a sudden it was like, I wasn't hearing that anymore. And that's when it was like, something happened, which obviously Vince flew down to meet him is what happened. And, and then it became different. And, he accepted the offer, and with the benefit of hindsight, man, what a great move that was for all concerned. Not AEW, but for Cody. I mean, Cody became a much bigger star than he would have had he stayed. And WWE, I mean, I thought that like he would help them a decent amount, but it was way more than I thought. I mean, the being the first guy to make that jump, and being a good talker really helped too. But it was right place at the right time and instinct and everything like that. And I mean, I think he played it well for him.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, if he had never left, he'd never be in this spot. If he'd stayed there, he'd have been mid-card guy.
I mean, he had already made it so he can't wrestle for the AEW championship. So like that was it was a weird setup for whatever his future was going to be in AEW.
That was yeah, I think they were. I never could figure out that angle why they did that, because I think it was at the time that he didn't want to be criticized for being in power and then being world champion. So he put this stip in that he was never, basically telling everyone, look, I'm never going to be world champion because I'm in power and I'm not going to be what his father was always criticized of being. I think that actually was a negative to the Young Bucks, Kenny Omega, and Cody, was how Dusty was viewed by being the booker and always putting himself on top. So they were going to come in and lose before they were established. Like there was, I think that they lost too much early on. And Tony, I think, felt the same way, because when he took over booking, one of the things he said is like, those guys wanted to lose way more than I wanted them to lose. And he allowed them to do that. And I think like the thing, especially with the Young Bucks and Omega, but Cody too, is that you're the $1 million player, so to speak. So you guys need to be up, 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 up. And then when your TV, they are wrestling stars to the grassroots, but they were not television stars. So when you get to be television stars, then you put other people over. But they were, I think they were so cognizant of the idea of, if we keep winning when we start, people resent us. And, and in today's fan base, it was going to happen. Like if Cody had been world champion and won it, there'd be people going like, oh, he's just like his father. Right. And that's not a good thing. And that's not what he wanted, is that viewpoint, especially because he always wanted to be a babyface.
Yeah.
And in AEW, stuff happened and the people, the fan base, not all the fan base, but enough in every city that you could hear it, just really wanted him to turn. And sometimes the fan base does that. And then it's like then they get mad that you don't turn. And should you, sometimes it works, with Roman Reigns, it worked. They never did it with Cena because Cena's merchandise sold so much. And I think it would have been a huge mistake to do it with Cena, even though it's like, oh, what a failure he is. He's getting booed in all these buildings as your top babyface. And it's like, he's selling more tickets and he's selling more merchandise. He is anything but a failure. Crowd reacts, if the crowd was silent, it would be sad, but if you get the crowd going, and the cheers and the boos are very, very loud and they're fighting each other, that's a good thing. It's not a bad thing.